Welcome to the Rural Pastor Podcast with your host, Pastor Andy Addis.
You plant the seeds in the ground, though the fields have long been brown. But Lord, when will your harvest come in? You're giving all you've got to give in the place where you've been sent. But will this labor make much difference in the end? Will no one ever know? Sometimes you feel so all alone. Like the prophet Jeremiah, you may be the one to go to the dying and the broken with a message of hope. To that church on the corner of that forgotten little town, with a room of empty pews where his love can still be found. You may never know of all the seeds you sow, but it just takes one willing soul to make him known.
One willing soul. Here we are back in 2024. It is so good to be with you here at the Rural Pastor Podcast. This is Andy Addis. I have the privilege of being on the North American Mission Board Replant Team, the Rural Director, and I am joined with Dany Payne, the Director of Missions for Flint Hills Baptist Association. Happy New Year, my friend.
Well, Happy New Year to you, my friend. You're a good start. Are you a good start to a year already?
Well, I think so. We, absolutely had a blast over the holidays, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into this, because we're starting a brand new series here. It is so much fun, though, to come back and start a brand new year. There's just something fresh about a new year, even if the last year was great or the last year was a bummer. Just starting again. Doesn't that sound great?
It does. I look forward to a new year, just thinking fresh and being encouraged, and certainly you navigate things from last year, but you're excited about the freshness of a new year. So absolutely.
Well, and that's why I want to do this. And by the way, this is an experiment for us. This is the first time Dany and I have done this via Zoom, and we're a couple of old guys using equipment that's beyond us. And so on your end, you actually had to call in a audio expert to get things connected. In that,
I did. The technology runs deep in your family.
It was my youngest son, 2 hours away, who was over there helping you out. I've been on the receiving end of that myself from time to time, getting some help from Nathan. But wow, what a privilege to be with you guys. If you're not familiar, maybe this is your first step into the Rural Pastor Podcast. What a great time to come join us. This is a podcast. This is a place where we want to pour into, partner with, pat on the back that rural pastor, because what you're doing is important and you are not alone. We want to do a 4-episode series on a spiritually healthy pastor, because this is that time of, resolutions. And if you go to the gym, if you have a gym membership, this is the worst time in the world to go, because everybody's going to be there for the next 2 or 3 weeks until that gets done and away with. But everybody wants to start doing things, but we want to focus on the spiritually healthy pastor. And as we're doing this, let me just ask you, Dany, do you have any, or do you believe in the whole resolutions kind of thing?
I used to way back in the day. I thought, although I need to start. But I also found that they're when you don't finish through, you think about all the things you didn't get right, you think all the things you meant to do and you didn't do. And I just really said, okay, I'm going to do the things that I normally keep doing. And if I can adjust or modify, like, I brought cookie crumble into the office today, and there were subjects in there. They were having to make good choices. And I said, well, there are 4 good choices. And they said, well, I can't have any of those choices. And I think it's just, I think the idea behind New resolutions are good if they help you. But I also find more often than not,
they drag you down. Yeah.
They drag you down.
Well, because you set expectations to it. You make annual goals that are great, but then when you don't steal them realized in January, you start feeling bad about yourself. There is kind of a phenomenon as we get into the spiritual health of pastors, and I'd never heard about it, but I understand it's been around for a while. It's in place of resolutions, having one-word resolutions. So kind of like a word for the year, almost a vision statement for your life in a word. And I really like that idea, because it's not a goal, it's like a mindset. And I was with a group of pastors even this morning, and one guy was telling me that his word is just trust. that he is going to spend a year walking in trust. And when he says he's been confronted already internally about needing to do that. And for me, I'm wrestling with whether I want to declare one or not. But if I did, I know what word it needs to be, which is discipline, which is, just that focused of so many areas of my life. I would benefit if I was just a little more disciplined. First thing I got to do is get rid of Candy Crush so that my downtime isn't stupid time. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I was listening to you. It's funny you say the word. I hadn't thought about that till just now. A couple of weeks ago, I had a devotional, and it was the transfiguration, and God, Peter's scurrying around trying to figure out what to do, and God says, "Listen to my son." So my word for this year, I didn't even realize it till you just said that, is listen.
Listen. There you go. I think that's a much better way than putting I got to lose 25 pounds. Well, I've lost 25 pounds, the same 25 pounds, probably 30 times. You know what I mean? But to have that one word. So maybe something to wrestle with. Not what we're talking about today, but in that vein. Yes. So let's talk about the spiritually healthy pastor. We want to base these next few episodes on Mark 12:28 through 31. We all know this. It's the great commandment. They asked Jesus, one of the scribes came to him and said, "Which is the most important of all the commandments?" And Jesus answered, "The most important is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." Now, we want to use this as a framework for 4 different episodes. And this isn't going to be a breakdown of this passage, but there are 4 categories there: how to love God, and in this mind, how to be healthy. That we're just going to use these with heart, mind, soul, and strength. So on this episode, let's talk about the pastor's heart. And we know that in the Old Testament, lave, in the New Testament, cardia, it is still that inner part of who you are. It's not the emotional part of who you are. It's the inner man. And one of my favorite passages I used to preach all the time at youth camp was Proverbs 4:23 through 27. So let me read this for us, and then let's make some statements about not just generally about guarding a heart, but a pastor's heart, what we need to do here. Here's what it says in Proverbs 4:23 through 27. "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or the left. Turn your foot away from evil." I love this. I love it. In the old NIV that I had back in the collegiate days, it says, "Above all else, guard your heart." And I think that is the principle, that part of being in ministry is that we have a heart like anybody else that can be fooled, it can be tricked, it can be hurt, it can be depressed. How do you guard that heart? And so you have to put up some defenses. And so here's the first thing. Let me just describe this, and then Dany, whatever you'd like to say about this, I'd like to hear it, because you deal with so many guys in so many places. I think part of guarding your heart means that you have to set up some defenses for your family, and for your heart. Now, for your family means to protect your family from the outside, and then also for your family to protect your family from the inside, and then for your own heart. So before we look at the different ways this passage talks about that, setting boundaries is a huge issue, and it seems really difficult for pastors. But how important have you known that to be, to just protect the heart of your family, your wife, your kids, and yourself by setting up good boundaries?
Andy, I'm thinking through that when I was pastoring and just in the role that I'm in, man, it is so important for pastors to know the key yeses and key nos so they can set healthy boundaries. Because if you don't have the courage to say no to things, your boundaries you're just all over the place, and you're wearing out your family, and your kids need to know that they are of the utmost importance to you. And it's revealed in what you say yes and no to. And if you're constantly saying yes to the things at church and your kids are dragging them along, they know who's really important or what's really important.
Yeah.
And so it's when I did premarital counseling with couples, I told them, look, if you don't set your own traditions, somebody will set them for you. Mm-mm. And it's so important that you, by saying yes and no early on, you set those boundaries so that you have margin to work from.
Yeah, when I remember 21 years ago when I came to the church that I'm serving right now in Hutchinson, Kansas, part of what we did when we came was I said, and here's what needs to happen. For my wife, she is a part of the church and not a hired staff member, and she'll be treated that way. And my kids are not pastors' kids. They're kids. And if they get treated any other way than that, I'd rather work at Walmart and have them have a loving relationship with Jesus than be a pastor here and have them dissuaded because of boundary lines that we didn't set. And we had a beautiful relationship, but we were very clear up front as to this is how I expect the congregation to treat my family and how I expect them to respond to you. And that's as people. But not only on the outside, on the inside too, you have to set some boundaries as to, how do you guard the heart in the home? And these are those things that we ask even every member of the church to do. What do you do to make sure that your teenager's heart isn't being hung out to dry? What do you do to make sure that the family is able to be a family and not siloed, segmented, whatever? And so we have to draw those lines. And then we have to draw the lines for our own heart as well. The passage goes on to give several ways that you should guard your heart, keep it with all vigilance. But let's put these in the perspective of ministry. First one says, put away from you crooked speech and put devious talk far from you. Now, we can preach that pretty well, but let's just talk pastor to pastor. One of the ways that our heart gets twisted is we allow ourselves to start talking smack about that church down the road that's obviously cheating because they've got bigger numbers than you. Or we allow ourselves to, get a little gossipy about some major TV evangelist, and we lay our hands on the anointed out there. And I think one of the ways that we can draw a boundary for ourselves is we just got to watch what we say, and don't be territorial, and to be honest with you, don't even care about who's doing what outside your community. God's given you a community to love on and to protect and to shepherd, and just kind of zip it.
Truth. Everything you said is truth, because guys, we don't like to say that we're competitive, but we are.
Oh yeah, we are.
And that leads to what you just said, Andy. We look at the church down the street and say they must be doing something unbiblical because they're growing more than us. I remember posting on Facebook several years ago that, can you pray for the church down the street to be more successful than you? Mm. And it's like, I can pray for them to do well, but would I really want them to be doing better than me? That shows you kind of where our hearts are sometimes. Yeah. And a competitive, think about this, Andy. When I used to take kids to camp, you know what the first question was? How many did you bring?
How many did you bring? Yep. That's right.
And then when you get around other pastors at our state meetings or associational meetings, what are you guys running now?
Oh, absolutely. It's all numbers. It's competitive. We're comparing.
And those lead to unhealthy places. Like you said, stay in your lane. God's given you a place to serve, and stop. I'm astonished at how much time we spend comparing.
Yeah, and who cares what Stephen Furtick's doing in the middle of central Kansas? I really don't care. God bless you out there. And if you say, they're just a Blythe on, I don't want to get involved in all that. I got enough going on right here. What is the old saying? If you do the do's, you don't have time to do the don'ts. And so we've got enough going on right here. But what I find amazing about this is when it says to keep with all vigilance your heart. How do you do that? It's about watching what you say. We are literally corrupting our hearts when we are talking smack about other churches, or we're being territorial, or we have that mindset. And we're wondering why we're heartsick over things. Well, Jesus said it's not what goes into a man that makes him defiled. It's what comes out. And so this is good advice, I believe, from the Proverbs, that we would watch what we say. Here's the second one. Watch what you see. And how are we going to guard our heart? What are we doing here? Every pastor that I know has a ministry or a model that they watch, admire, and want to emulate. And while that can be good, the truth is God has never called you to be somebody else. He's called you to be like Jesus. And if we are constantly putting our eyes on, because this is the opposite of talking about a church or ministry you don't like because it's competitive. You can always emulate something that's another state away. Because they're not in your backyard. Yep. But if you put your eyes on that, you can start to want to be made in the image of that ministry or made in the image of that minister. And I think that's just as damaging. So not only watching what you say, but you can guard your heart by being careful about what you allow yourself to model after or admire. Is that a fair statement?
Again, I echo I completely agree with you just said, because when you look at those guys, you're like, oh, if I just spoke like the Morgan Freeman and I had the intellect of Timothy Keller and had the muscles of Furtick, then, I mean, and I think we spend our time trying to look like those guys, and God's like, you're not looking as much like me as you used to. And I think going back to what you said, Andy, the more time we're spending looking like Jesus, the less time we're going to spend comparing, and that protects our heart.
Amen. It says, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be set before you. I don't know about you, but wherever my head goes, that's where my car goes when I drive. So I cannot do sightseeing while I drive. We were doing the Continental Divide. Up 70 goes up over the mountains up over there, and we're on one side. And if you haven't been up there in a while, let me explain this to you. That they just apparently ran out of money for guardrails. I don't know what happened, and they started just putting these little alpine sticks out there that literally, if you're on a bike, they're not going to stop you. And my thought is, the stick is only there so that when you hear it, you're about to die. That's all that is. Well, my family was really enjoying the trip. I mean, they were having just a blast. And Kathy kept going, oh, look at this, look at that. And I am white-knuckled staring at the lines on the highway. And I said, honey, you need to stop or we're all going to die. It's going to be the last thing we see before Jesus. Because if my eyes look to the left, I'm going to go left. If my eyes look right, I'm going to go right. I have to keep that gaze directly before. And to me, that's a vision statement. God hasn't called you to somebody else's vision. He hasn't called you to somebody else's ministry. He's called you, and keep those eyes straight forward. Again, there's other applications for this in guarding your heart. But for the pastor, I think it's important that we not admire or model somebody else's call, but we make sure we understand who God made us to be.
It is so true, because in your context where you are, you can take somebody that's rocking it out somewhere else and go, I'm going to try to do that here. And typically that's a train wreck waiting to happen. And also that they don't fit the culture of your church and your community. And God's going, I set you up for here. I'm the one that wired you for where I've got you. And so why don't you run with that? There's nothing wrong with grabbing nuggets from guys and books and stuff, but man, I do that. I've done that for years, but man, rest in the way that God's wired you for what he's called you to do, and grow it and strengthen it and build on that.
Well, and here's a phenomenal thought. Think about this. God knit you together. He has given you every life experience. He has trained you and prepped you and called you and placed you because you, not some other version of you, but you are the perfect thing for that moment. That's what God, he didn't say, I'm going to put you there and try and be like somebody else. He said, I know exactly who you are, and I put you in this place because that's what they need. Now go be who I made you to be. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Totally true.
Okay, one last one from this. Now remember, we're talking about pastors, spiritual health. How do we guard our heart? We got to watch what we say because we can corrupt ourselves. We got to watch what we're admiring, what we're seeing. That's letting your eyes look. But then verse 26 and 27, ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or left. Turn your foot away from evil. This is about where you go. We watch what we say, watch what we see, and you kind of watch where you go. And I know you're a dome, so you're going to be all over this one. I'm just going to tee it up for you here. It's really important that you hang out with people of like mind who are encouraging and accountability holding and will help you move forward in the right direction. We need more than just Susie Sassalot, who you're trying to keep happy, and the deacon from beyond who looks like the Undertaker from WWE, right? That's always there to break your back over something. I know we have good examples of this too, but we can get so wrapped up in those communities, we miss the fact that there are communities of pastors, leaders, maybe even in your church, but I'm thinking other pastors, other leaders, where you're not in competition for resources and everything doesn't have to be about the ministry that you're in. Those groups are so important. I made the mention a moment ago that I was with some pastors this morning. Every Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., one of my favorite times of the week. When I have to travel, I miss it. It's about 5 or 6 guys from all different denominational stripes. The only thing we have in common is Jesus, right? That's it. We got so many. But I love those guys, and they do me so much good. I think where you hang out is also another way to guard and promote your heart in the right direction. So what say you, Director of Mission? Is that a fair statement?
It is. And, Andy, when listening to you talk about that, I think when you think back to the beginning where we were just talking about that, when you start to hang out with guys, there's less competition. You're not thinking about comparisons. You're thinking about, like you just said, our common ground is Jesus. And if I have that with this guy, and like you and I both know a dear friend who passed away a few years ago named Mark McKay.
Oh, Mark, yeah.
My time with him, he was the youth pastor at a town just south of me, and we were never in competition. We never looked at trying to be better than the other. We just simply walked with one another to try to help one another to be more Christ-like in the jobs that God had called us to. And it would have been so easy for us to be competitive in nature because we were close enough in proximity to get kids, so to speak. But my time with him helped me to not be competitive with the churches that were in my community. And we talk about this a lot in my seat, is that there's no reason on the face of the earth to do this alone.
Amen.
There's no reason.
Amen. And because we're doing it alone, we're a little heartsick over it when we go through these difficult times and difficult places, right?
And you get somebody that's chirping in your ear about things that they don't like about your church or about your music or about whatever, to have somebody to talk to, pray with, to check you, whatever it is, they're priceless.
Amen.
And so they help guard our hearts. That's why God's got those people around us. They're not competition. They're potentially life friends.
Well, and exactly. 100%. Ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner. This group of guys that I've been meeting with for years. And I'll be straight up, at the very beginning, it was a little awkward because it was like, how many are you running? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm the biggest. Our church is the biggest ministry in town, and so everybody they just assume you're cheating, right? That's how that works. But there was a retired Lutheran pastor who came one day, and he said, "I have a statistic for you all." And he had called every church in our little micropolitan. We have about 30,000 people in Hutchinson. He called all 86 churches, and he got the seating capacity for that congregation. And so he did the math on the seating capacity for every church in town. And if they had 2 services a weekend, that they still could only get half of our city in the seats on any given Sunday. And he goes, guess that shows that we're not really competing for lost people, at least. And that just changed the dynamic of everything, because it wasn't a scarcity of resources. And now it's fun. This group of guys that I'm with, they all look at me and they go, oh, well, they think of what I have to do because we have so many more people. I go, sucks to be you. Good grief. So the whole timbre has changed, and it's just a great community. And it's really a great place to guard your heart. They lift you up and they also call you out, and that needs to happen. So here we are, guys. This is the beginning of this little series on the spiritually healthy pastor, and we have to love the Lord God with all our heart. We have to protect our heart, guard it, watching what you say, watching what you see, watching where you're going, who you're hanging with. And then finally, what do we do with all this? When you find that one of your senses is out of whack, when your eyes are making you weary, or your tongue is making you bitter, or you find that you're no longer a thermostat in the room, but you're a thermometer amongst the people that you're in, and they're setting your temperature. You got to make sure that you look at this. It's a heart attack. That's exactly what it's a spiritual heart attack. And it's time to get some CPR. And that means, above all else, draw those lines, keep with all vigilance, and guard your heart. Next week, we're going to talk about the pastor's mind. Oh, that's a dangerous subject, is it not?
It is, man.
We'll talk about the pastor's mind. But between now and then, we just want you to know that this should be a wonderful start to the year. I hope that you're encouraged by each and every bit of this. We are looking forward to walking through this with you. Dany, it's going to be a great journey. We got a lot planned for 2024. And this is just the beginning. So we hope you'll continue to join with us. We're going to talk about the spiritually healthy pastor. Guard that heart. Next week, we'll talk about how to keep that mind where it needs to be. Many blessings. See you next time.
Like the prophet Jeremiah, you may be the one to go to the dying and the broken with a message of hope. To that church on the corner of that forgotten little town, with a room of empty pews where his love can still be found. You may never know of all the seeds you sow, but it just takes one willing soul to make him known.
Thank you for joining us on the Rural Pastor Podcast. Special thanks to Chosen Road for our incredible theme music and to 180 Digital for their corporate sponsorship and making all the technical things possible. Rural Church Leader, we want to remind you that your work is important, that you are important, and that you are not alone. See you again soon for another edition of the Rural Pastor Podcast.